Dear students, in the previous class, we were discussing about the four main components of the ecosystem. So, which are the four main components? Can you name it? The first component is what? So, in the previous class, we have already discussed the first component. What is that? So, we have discussed about productivity. Yes or no? So, productivity means so the total biomass produced in a given unit time in a particular area, in the given area. That is what is called as productivity. And again, in productivity, we have studied the different types of productivity, such as primary productivity and yes, secondary productivity. So primary productivity, again we have two types under primary productivity, that is GPP, that is gross primary productivity, and net primary productivity. So all these things we have come across. Also we have studied the factors influencing the productivity. All these aspects we have already studied in the previous class. Now in today's class we are going to study with the next next important factor of any ecosystem, called decomposition. So what do you mean by decomposition? Have you come across this word called decomposition in any of the previous classes? Yes, definitely you have come across this word decomposition in the lower classes also, right? So what is decomposition? Can you try to define this decomposition? So decomposition means what? Yes, it is nothing but the process in which the complex organic molecules are broken down into simpler ones. Yes or no? See, when I say complex organic molecules are broken down into simpler ones, you can also correlate this statement with respect to respiration. Alva? Respiration alli kuda enagutte, the complex organic molecules will be broken down into simpler ones, and it is also correlated with the release of enormous amount of energy. Where? In respiration. Adre illi decomposition anta helidre, it is a process which is also in some sense it is similar to respiration, because here also the complex organic molecules are broken down into simpler ones, simpler inorganic molecules and other nutrients. But here decomposition anta helidre, it is not taking place mainly inside the body of any living organism, but it is taking place outside the body, maybe mostly in the soil. And decomposition mainly occurs not with the food, not with the organic molecule which has to be broken down to release energy. Illi decomposition alli kuda breaking down process aagta ide, respiration alli kuda breaking down process aagta ide, but here this is not mainly meant for the release of energy. In the case of respiration, we see the breaking down process taking place mainly to release the energy, but here the main aim of decomposition is to break down the organic molecules into simpler ones so that they can be mixed or they can be joining with the soil once again, and they can be reabsorbed by the plants. So that is what is called as mineral recycling or nutrient recycling, which is one of the components of the ecosystem, which we will study little later in the same chapter. Yes, so let us try to see the definition of decomposition. It is the process in which organic matter is broken down into inorganic substances like carbon dioxide, water and nutrients. That is what is called as decomposition. So this is the basic idea that you have also understood in the previous class, right? So you know what is decomposition. And so when we talk more about decomposition, or when we go into the details of the decomposition, see, organisms which carry out the process of decomposition are called as what? They are called as decomposers. Can you name a few of the decomposers that you have come across in your previous classes? So you have come across bacteria, you have come across fungi, right? Cyanobacteria. Different types of living microorganisms are there which will carry out the process of decomposition, right? And they are called as decomposers, or generally they are also called as detritivores. Have you heard this word? Detritivores anta kuda ನಾವು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಕರೀತೇವೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? So but basically detritivores are slightly different from that of the decomposers. Decomposers is a general term for those organisms which are involved in the process of decomposition. But Decomposers is a general term, I told you. Why it is a general term? Because again the decomposition will be involving various important steps or different processes are involved in the decomposition process. It is not a single step process. Decomposition, it is a very lengthy and complex process involving many steps. And this also includes the participation of different types of living organisms. And all of these organisms which are helping for these different processes or steps to take place and ultimately cause the decomposition of the organic matter, those all organisms are generally called as decomposers. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಆರ್ಗಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಆಗಿದೆ ಆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆರ್ಗಾನಿಸಮ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಜನರಲಿ ನಾವೇನು ಕರಿತೇವೆ, ದೇ ಆರ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಡಿಕಂಪೋಸರ್ಸ್. ಅಂಡ್ ದಿಸ್ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ಲೂಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ ದೋಸ್ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಕಾಲ್ಡ್ ಆಸ್ ಡಿಕಂಪೋಸಿಷನ್. ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದೋಸ್ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ಸ್ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ಡ್ ಇನ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಡಿಕಂಪೋಸಿಷನ್? ಲೆಟ್ ಅಸ್ ಸಿ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟೇಷನ್, ಲೀಚಿಂಗ್, catabolism, humification, mineralization. All these are the different steps involved in the process of decomposition. Not only that, these are also arranged in the sequential way here. That means first fragmentation takes place, this will be followed by leaching, that will be followed by catabolism, followed by humification, this will be followed by mineralization. So these are the stepwise processes which are in association, which are taking place in association with different organic molecules and also different organisms, right? So this process largely occurs where? Yes, of course in the soil, right? Because most of the organisms which are carrying out this process of decomposition called as decomposers, they are mainly present in the soil. This also occurs in the aquatic medium. Basically, when we say in the aquatic environment, new pond ecosystem anna ಅಥವಾ marine ecosystem ಅಂತ consider ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ, so there also decomposition is taking place. So, but even though it is in the aquatic ecosystem, but deep below the aquatic ecosystem, right? The basement of the aquatic ecosystem also will consist of what? The soil. And we know that soil present below any aquatic ecosystem is a rich soil, rich with different types of organic molecules or nutrients, and obviously the microorganisms which are responsible for the breaking down of those organic molecules also are present in that soil. So ultimately, so whichever type of ecosystem you are talking about, ultimately the site where decomposition takes place, the place where decomposition takes place is nothing but soil only. Yes. So now let us go on seeing these processes, what exactly happens in the process of decomposition in these different steps. So before we go into the details, we need to understand this word, a simple word called detritus. See, I used the word detritivores, right? See, we have used these common words. Herbivore means what? The animal which feeds on the plants, herbs. Alva? So carnivore, the animal which feeds on the animal, another smaller animal which is smaller than that, right? So vor mainly stands for what? This mainly gives out the meaning that feeding upon something, right? So detritivore means what? An organism feeding on the detritus, right? Detritivore actually means an organism feeding on the detritus. So what is the meaning of detritus then? Detritus means what? Detritus is nothing but the dead remains of the plants and animals. Dead remains means what? The fallen off leaves of the plants, maybe the bark which is falling on the surface of the soil, maybe the dead parts of the animals or plants, or the entire dead body of the animal it can be, or any small part of the plant or animal. So ee ella organic molecules enirutte, that means the dead remains of the plants and animals, they are collectively called as detritus. So detritus collectively constitutes what? The dead remains of plants and animals. So what are the dead remains? As I just told you, dead leaves, bark, flowers, remains of the dead animals, right? Sometimes ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರಾಣಿದು ಒಂದು ಬಾಲ ಕಟ್ಟಾಗಬಹುದು, right? Or sometimes any part of the body of the animal or maybe plant which is cut and fallen on the ground will become what? Detritus. and fecal matter of the animals also for that matter will be considered as one of the components of the detritus. So what exactly it is implying? Detritus means what? Detritus is something which is actually very rich with the organic molecules. It is rich with the organic matter, and it is this substance which needs to be broken down into simpler organic molecules. But is it possible? Is it possible for any living organism, or is it possible for any organic matter to directly undergo the process of decomposition? ಒಂದೇ ಸಲ ಅದು ಕೊಳೆತು ಹೋಗಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ, right? That is why ಅದೇನಾಗಬೇಕು, ಮೊದಲು it has to be broken down into small pieces, right? So that is what is going to happen now. That is why decomposition is a stepwise process. It cannot take place in one step. It is not a quick process. It is a complex process involving various steps. So as I just told you, detritivores are the organisms that break down the detritus into smaller particles. As I just told you, detritus is just the dead remains. Adinu kolathu hogilla. Leaf, the dead leaf fallen off of the plant body, right? So that is what is called as a detritus. A dead remain of any organism is just called as detritus, which is not yet decomposed. Adu innu kolathu hoglilla, right? And so before it decomposes, the decomposition process starts by the detritivores themselves. So detritivores are those organisms which feed upon that detritus. Not only that, while feeding upon that detritus, they will break that dead remain of the organic dead remains of the organism into smaller pieces. Ene irbodu, it may be a flower, it may be a leaf, it may be any dead organism, or it may be a dead remain of any animal or plant for that matter. So adanna tundu tundagi katrisutte. It is going to make the fragments of that. It's going to cut into small pieces, right? So this work is carried out by the detritivores. Example for detritivores, which example can you give? Earthworm. Earthworm is the best example for the detritivore, and many other insects are there, right? And some reptiles are there, right? Reptiles anta helidre, they may not be feeding upon the plants, but they are definitely feeding upon the animals, and they will tear away, they will cut the animal body parts into smaller pieces, right? So many organisms, they contribute to this process. So earthworm, basically we call this as the farmer's friend. Have you heard this one? So raitana mitra anta karitave, earthworm, right? So earthworm is called as farmer's friend. Why? It is mainly because one thing, it helps for the process of decomposition, right? I'm using the word is carefully. It helps for the process of decomposition. That means it is not directly actually involving in the process of decaying. It does not cause the process of decaying. It will only help the organic matter to get decayed further by making it into smaller pieces. And also one more benefit of the earthworm to the farmers is that, see, this earthworm, so you might have noticed in the moist soil, if you water your garden every day for about a week, and if you dig the soil a few feet below, then you will find numerous earthworms coming out of the soil. That means it mainly survives just below the soil surface, subaerial area, and it will also prefer to live in the moist condition of the soil. And it is an aerobic organism. It is not an anaerobe. It survives because of the presence of the oxygen. It will come up. So more frequently, now and then, it has to come up to the surface of the soil, and it will breathe. Also, it will collect some of the material to be broken down, because it is also its food. Dead remains surface mele irutte. In order to collect those dead remains, it will come up to the surface, and when it has to burrow the soil. It has to burrow the soil. It has to dig the soil, and it has to come up, right? Once it comes up, it will collect the food material. It will breathe, and once again it has to go back to the place where it was. It will forget the path that it had come. Adu bandiro dariyanna, adu todiruvantaha dig madiruvantaha hole anna martu hogutte. And that is why it will dig once again. So that means every time it comes up or every time it goes down, it will forget its pathway that it had dug for itself. Every time it will dig the earth, and that is how aeration will be made possible. Aeration into the lower layers of the soil will be made possible, so that the plants which are growing in that soil, the roots of those plants will be properly aerated. And that is how, because of the oxygen enrichment in the soil, the plants can grow very well, and that itself will make the soil very rich with the various nutrients also. That is how the soil is called as fertile soil, and that is why earthworm is called as farmer's friend. I hope you understood this one, right? So earthworm is basically a type of detritivore. Now, these detritivores, they carry out the process of what? Breaking down the dead remains, and this process itself is called as fragmentation. Fragmentation, it is the process of breaking down the organic molecules of the detritivores into smaller particles. What these detritivores do, what function the detritivores are doing, that function itself will be called as fragmentation. Breaking down the dead remains into smaller fragments, smaller particles, is what is called as what? Fragmentation. And these fragmented particles, so they further undergo the process. See, there is a process called leaching. See, in the previous slide we had seen the sequential process. First comes what? Fragmentation, then comes the leaching. So we are talking now about the leaching. Fragmentation andre enu anta gottayitu nimge. Now we are talking about leaching. Illi fragment agi ulkondiruvantaha small pieces enide, the small fragments of the detritus which are remaining on the surface of the soil, because of the raining or because of the water percolating into the layers of the soil. When it rains, what happens? So of course, when lot of water is there on the surface of the water, on the surface of the land, definitely, so water will be running off. Water flows on the surface. But if the soil has the capacity to drain the water into its layers, especially when the plants are there, so because of the roots are there, and the soil will be having a capacity to percolate the water into its layers, so that is when ವಾಟರ್ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಇಂಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಭೂಮಿಯ ಮೇಲ್ಮೈಯಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ the small fragments of the detritus, so the organic and inorganic water soluble inorganic molecules, inorganic nutrients ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, ನೀರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಕರಗುವಂತಹ inorganic salts ಅಥವಾ inorganic nutrients ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, so that will dissolve in the water, and so they will get percolated into the deep layers of the soil, and that will become unavailable nutrient or unavailable salts anta kariತೀವಿ. So the fragmented particles are lying here and there over the surface of the soil because the water percolates. So when the water is clogged for a few minutes on the surface, the inorganic nutrients from that fragmented product, fragmented product nalliruvanತಹ inorganic nutrients ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, that will get dissolved in the water, and they will also get diffused into the deeper layers of the earth, and that will be unavailable because they run very deeper under the surface of the soil. And they run very deeper means how much deeper? To the depth where the plants cannot reach. The roots of the plants cannot reach to that depth, and that is why that salts, that inorganic nutrients which will be running off along with the water during the process of leaching, that will be considered as unavailable salts. So this process is what is called as leaching, right? The water soluble inorganic nutrients present in the fragmented product go down into the soil horizon and get precipitated as unavailable salts. This process is called as leaching, right? I hope you have understood. And after leaching, what happens? The next process is catabolism. See, fragmentation aitu, fragmentation aada nantara whatever the fragmented product was there, a part of the fragmented product, so it will lose its inorganic nutrients because it will be dissolved in the water, and it will run off along the water to the deeper layers of the earth, and it will become unavailable salt. Now what happens? The remaining detritus, fragmented product of the detritus which is present on the surface of the soil even still, so bacteria and fungi which are present in the soil, they are going to look after that remaining part of the detritus product. Fragmented detritus product anna yaar care tagoltare? Bacteria mattu fungi. Now what they do? they release different enzymes. Because of the action of the bacterial and fungal enzymes, the organic matter present in the fragmented product of the detritus. The organic matter present in the fragmented product of the detritus will be broken down into simpler inorganic substances. I hope you are getting my point. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟೇಷನ್ ಆಗಿ ಉಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿತ್ತಲ್ವಾ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟೆಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟು, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಎ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಫ್ರಾಗ್ಮೆಂಟೆಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಏನಾಯಿತು, ದಟ್ ವಾಸ್ ಲೀಚ್ಡ್. ದಟ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಇನ್ಆರ್ಗ್ಯಾನಿಕ್ ಸಾಲ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಡಿಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಆಗಿ, ವಾಟರ್ ಡಿಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಆಗಿ, ದಟ್ ವೆಂಟ್ ಡೌನ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಇಟ್ ಬಿಕೇಮ್ ದ ಅನ್ಅವೈಲಬಲ್ ಸಾಲ್ಟ್ ಆಯಿತು. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ರಿಮೈನಿಂಗ್ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ product of the fragmentation present on the surface of the soil will undergo this catabolism because of the action of the enzymes released by the bacteria and fungi. Bacteria and fungi, they are going to feed upon these and they are going to release different enzymes. These enzymes, what they do is these enzymes are going to break down the complex organic molecules, maybe lipids, maybe carbohydrates, maybe nucleic acids, right? So those complex organic molecules are broken down into their components of simpler inorganic molecules, right? So inorganic substances are formed and this process is what is called as catabolism. This is the important process of decomposition, because organic molecule, the basis of decomposition is nothing but the organic molecules have to be broken down into simpler inorganic substances, and that is what is happening here, and this process is what is called as what? Catabolism. Yes. So next one is humification. Humification means what? Formation of a black amorphous powder like substance called humus. Nodi, if you walk into the forest area, or if you walk into an area where there are so many trees, not necessarily forest, ಒಂದು ಗಾರ್ಡನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಮರಗಳು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇದ್ದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ರೆ, the soil, even though it is not a black soil, sometimes you will see a soil which is covered by so many leaves, fallen off leaves ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಅದರ ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ನೀವು ಎತ್ತಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಒಂದು ಲೀಫ್ ಅನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದು ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ, so a kind of black amorphous soil will be there, and that is what is called as humus ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೇವೆ. And you also might have heard that, so that humus is very rich with nutrients, and plants they can grow very nutritiously, very healthily in that particular soil. It is because of which actually ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ catabolism ನಲ್ಲಿ the bacterial enzymes and fungal enzymes are going to carry out the process of decomposition ಅಂತ. So those inorganic substances that were formed during the catabolism, they are still available on the surface of the soil, and those substances now are going to form what? A black amorphous substance called humus. So this accumulation of this black humus, amorphous substance called humus, this process is called as humification. See, this humus is not only rich with nutrients, but is also very highly resistant to microbial activity. Andre, this is antimicrobial. So this catabolism ಆಗಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಟೀರಿಯಾ ಮತ್ತು ಫಂಗಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು, ಬಟ್ ಒನ್ಸ್ ದ ಹ್ಯೂಮಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಡ್, ದ ಮೈಕ್ರೋಬಿಯಲ್ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಗ್ರೇಟ್ಲಿ ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ಡ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೈ ದಿಸ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ವೆರಿ ಫ್ರೆಂಡ್ಲಿ ಫಾರ್ ದ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟ್ಸ್, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಈ ಹ್ಯೂಮಸ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ the plants, the roots of the plants, they are not easily infected by unwanted microorganisms. Yes or no? That is why humus is highly resistant to microbial activity, and that is why the further illi aada hage catabolism activity cannot continue in the same rate in the case of humus here. Humus formation adaga catabolism cannot take place in the faster rate as it was taking place here, so and it will be greatly reduced. Humus, because of its resistant capacity against the microorganisms, decomposition process will be greatly slowed down in this humus, right? So being colloidal in nature, it serves as a reservoir of nutrients. That is what I told you. Humus, humification adaga. And next one, so humus definitely it will undergo a decomposition, but at a very slow rate. Okay, and the next one is, yes, it is what is called as mineralization. Mineralization process ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, the whatever the inorganic substances were there, inorganic substances ಇರುವಂತಹ minerals ಏನಿದೆ, that will once again join the soil. So some of the minerals, they run down along with the water. By dissolving in the water, they will run down to the different layers of the soil, and some of it will remain just subaerial, andre just soil layer ಕೆಳಗಡೆ. ulkolutte. Some of it remains on the surface of the soil. So that will once again will be reabsorbed by the plant body, by the roots of the plants. So that is what is called as mineralization, right? In this diagram, you can see the tree is there and a dead plant or a dead plant material or dead leaf that is fallen off on the ground, and this is what we call it as detritus, right? So detritus, I had told you, it is any dead remain of the plant or animal. So this we can consider as the detritus. And those organisms, you can look at this one. See, this earthworm is feeding upon this detritus. So it is going to absorb the nutrition from this, and this organism, the earthworm, can be referred to as what? Detritivore, correct, no? And so here, a part of this detritus will be partially consumed by decomposers, right? So in this condition, actually, so decomposition taking place, that means actually catabolism is taking place. So illinda nodi, so a part of this so will be actually catabolized because of the action of the fungi and bacteria anta helidde, and this is what is called as catabolism. And here you can see, so some of it will be rich with nutrients and leach down to the different layers of the earth as a chemical solution because of the chemical action, and that will become the unavailable salt anta helidde. This process is what is called as leaching anta kariteve. Yes or no? So here you can also see the farmer's friend earthworm will also die, and it is also going to form the organic rich soil which also will get leached down. So all plants and all animals, not only the leaf, even the dead animals also, they are going to form what? The organic rich soil, and they are also will be leached down. And organic rich soil in the enagutte, humus formation agutte. Humus formation will again lead to the mineralization, and the minerals which are stored in the soil will be reabsorbed by the plant body here. Yes, so this is a simple diagrammatic picturization of the entire process of decomposition here. The four main steps are what? The first step, what is it called as? It is called as fragmentation. The next step will be called as leaching, and after leaching comes the catabolism, then comes humification, and the last step will be called as mineralization. So this can be an important 5-mark question. Diagram may not be asked, but you may need to explain the entire process, and also individual 1-mark question. What is humification? What is humus? What is decomposition? What is catabolism? Anta kuda kelbodu. Okay, so you need to remember all of these. So in the next class we will consider, of course, we will complete this one and we can go for the next class. Factors affecting the rate of decomposition. So decomposition, you have understood. Decomposition largely it is impacted by the presence or absence of the oxygen, because it is largely oxygen requiring process here, right? So the rate of decomposition is controlled by chemical composition of detritus and climatic factors. Andre detritus anta helidre dead remains of the plant and animal enirutte. So how organic rich it is, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿರುವಂತಹ ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಯೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಏನಿವೆ ಅದರ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ, if the organic constituents of the detritus or the dead plant or animal material is rich with organic molecules, then obviously the decomposition process will be slowed down, alva. And also the climatic factors anta helteve. Climatic factors anta helidre hege, I will come to that point. Basically temperature ಮತ್ತು moisture ಬೇಕು. In particular condition, decomposition rate can be slower if the detritus is rich in lignin and chitin. So you know, you have studied about the cell wall composition of different organisms, lignin, chitin ಅಥವಾ pectin, ಇಂಥದೆಲ್ಲ ಮೆಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, so it's a very hard coating and also a very complex organic molecule or complex polysaccharide layer present on the cell wall. In order to digest that material, it will take a lot of time to the organisms or decomposers. That is why, so decomposition of the detritus rich with the organic molecules can be slower, and it can be quicker if the detritus is rich with nitrogen and water soluble substances. Andre inorganic molecules ಹೆಚ್ಚಿದ್ರೆ, organic molecules ಹೆಚ್ಚಿದ್ರೆ ಅದನ್ನು break down ಮಾಡಿ inorganic molecules ಮಾಡಿ, then inorganic molecules have to be again simplified. But inorganic molecules already are there, organic molecules are lesser in content, then definitely it will be faster. So as I told you, climatic factors such as temperature and soil moisture are also these two are the most important factors influencing on the process of what? Decomposition. So temperature ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಇರಬೇಕು and also moisture should be there. So this should be the condition in order to undergo decomposition. So humus ಅಂತ ಏನು ಕರಿತೀವಿ, humification mainly takes place in a little high temperature and moist condition of the soil. So this is going to affect on the activities of the microorganisms present in the soil, and this, see, you have seen the growth of the fungi or bacteria only when the moisture is there plus the temperature is there. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಹೈ ಟೆಂಪರೇಚರ್ ಇರಬೇಕು ಮತ್ತು ಮಾಯಿಶ್ಚರ್ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ದ ಗ್ರೋತ್ ಆಫ್ ಫಂಗೈ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಈಸಿಲಿ ಹ್ಯಾಪನಿಂಗ್, and this condition will actually have an effect on the activities of the microorganisms, and that in turn will also impact the process of decomposition. Warm and moist environment, as I told you, favors the decomposition, whereas low temperature and anaerobiasis means absence of oxygen. So that is going to inhibit the process of decomposition, resulting in building up of the organic materials. So I hope you have understood this, the factors affecting on the process of decomposition. And in the next class, we are going to consider the next component of the ecosystem called energy flow. Thank you.